Now, and I'd like to say thank you very much to the president. In fact, he's made Ghana very proud. He's made Africans proud. And baby Kwame Nkrumah Ewubiano is going to be a very proud man. This was not about slanging. This is not about going to wear suits to prove you to Bruni say you were a slave. It was about letting it clear, and you could hear him clearly. He was not trying to impress anybody. He was telling the white man, he was telling the slave master that action was wrong and you need to admit to it. Now, again, and I'm very happy. Say, Ubia, are you ready? Say, and then you bring no creno. The credit very, very important. Send a bear, you know, you be who the echo na yet to me, Abuama or Manichi Akoso. Now, there's one very important story. The President of the Republic, John Dramani Mahama, and the OBPA, United States of America, and in the history of the United Nations, any African leader with me are very emphatic and made it clear when it comes to Africa's position on slave trade. In fact, lots and lots of leaders are the UN in recent times. They have tried to speak on slave trade, but they've not been bold enough to be blunt. They've not been bold enough to say it into the face of the West that, you know what, slave trade isn't something that we are supposed to discuss casually. It's something that we need to mean. We need to basically understand that it was atrocities. It was adebia abrofo omofa ebibifo ehye omoso te se moano. It was say kan wo munim no mote ase say eye bone a omuditi a ebibiman ene ebibifo. So John Dramani Mahama today repatriate justice, and John Mahama had the opportunity to speak at the UN Assembly, and he made it clear to everybody there and indirectly to the world that, you know what, when it comes to slave trade, we are supposed to stop. And I'll say ye jai sakasana ye to sebi bebrino. Now I will say to me tia siema brofono so tia say. And Africa baby you do know. It is say a brebre slave, and I say ye nananoma ye bechi omo ewo nkwasum a sebi ododo no na enye omo pe a abrofo be form a omo koye omo se emoa ehye omo so omo di dwumiri mo no e wo sa abrofo te ase se enye sorry pe na sebi ebema asem no eso atwa but e wo so omo kire ebro sedio sorry keke e wo so omo ma te ase se de omo ye no sebi omo di bone until se obi edu bone until se nipa ne begia tum until the person who committed a crime admits to that crime, it becomes very difficult for you to even have closure on that particular crime. So we do bonnie now and to say we do bonia. I na wo nipa utibuano and to me entino because the person at the point the odi winani or how femu any yawa femu nyina on jimpon to musa wa bonnie. And this awo kasana wa adwene o say saade na odi ye wo no enye bibia na say wan kasa no ubu when abumfia. You are basically seeing yourself as an underdog. Intended John Mahama opportunity to speak on slave trade. And I'll catch say, Muni bibi, dear my ending our some numo, Namosati as yes, mo dear bonnet, na asuche wa I was said Sebio, Wankasano, Modemam home, Monfamamo. A debia mofa free or ho, a debia muye tia, Sebio, a physical, a spiritual, a everything psychological. No? You people have to understand the say, I was said. Mopa chow na mutu wana mo anamoa ebema yeni ebibi mind so yakoma toye yim. Every say, without due respect, as much as some people believe say slave trade in Achano, it has not left we Africans. There are lots and lots of people in the diaspora, African Americans, people from some of the islands around the world. They are still heads because they don't even know where they are from. They are still trying to figure out where their root is. And that alone, for a human being to be on this planet to say, it is one of the biggest disadvantage, human disadvantage. And I say, humanity, something you can take from people they can never get back. Into the idea alone, or that thing alone going through the minds of other people around the world, and the cost of slavery, this is not a joke. This is not something that we drink tea and walk and talk and make it look like it's a simple conversation. The white man needs to understand those who were involved in the slave trade, they need to understand that this is not just mere talk. This is something they need to apologize about and take action on it by making sure they bring it back. They need to, at a point, to admit to their actions. But for a very long time, so I share a year. And I would take a conversation about slave trader. They have not admitted some might be boni bia. What they do sometimes is, oh, let's compensate. What they do sometimes is, oh, artifact be for Bromo. But what we need, the closure we need, is for the slave master to admit to say we did boni, we deal. We cool Africans were higher, and when they admit to that, then we sit at the table and whatever consequences I will say free and it needs to come until the slave master admits to his or her crime. We cannot say that slave trade and I say it has been forgotten. John Dramani Mahama today spoke at the UN, and we have to listen to the President of the Republic, and this is one of the finest statements any president from Africa will make boldly. And in fact, at a point he said that Abrofone Jie that is a crime against humanity. Untumi embe chinipa emfani kogu ebuom emfani kogu shepem ase be 9 months 8 months de nam epunsuom na sebio oma de duane te se aboa odi ne koduru fie so a na de na kogu kejim te se aboa te se nantwie. John Mahama said these are the realities that we Africans we have lived with for years and centuries, and that needs to stop. And the only way we will come to a conclusion or a closure, put a closure on this matter, is for you, the slave master, you, the white people we are sitting with at the United States, their headquarters, to admit to the fact that you have committed a crime, and that crime, some way, somehow, you have to admit and basically pay for them. This is John Dramani Mahama today at the UN head office.
Truth begins with language, with the power that words hold to shape consciousness and to shift perspectives to propel an action or other. I therefore offer this truth as a starting point. There's no such thing as a slave. There were human beings who were trafficked and then enslaved by people who believed they could own those human beings as chattels, as their personal property. Some will hear this and think I'm splitting hairs. Isn't that the same thing, they might ask? No, it's not. Not at all the same thing. Not if you acknowledge an individual's humanity. Not if you respect an individual's basic right to dignity. The entire transatlantic slave trade was designed to deny African people their humanity. And that denial was premised on a racial hierarchy with no basis in fact or science, a racial hierarchy that deemed whiteness superior and blackness inferior. The atrocities that were committed against enslaved Africans, the myriads of injustice that were born of slavery and carried forward into successive social framework, took place specifically because those persons were considered objects, not human beings. So when discussing slavery and its resulting institutions and practices, we must always start by reclaiming racial equality, the dignity of Africans, the humanity of our ancestors who were enslaved, and as a matter of course, our own humanity.
John Dramani Mahama and the Ekasa UN no Omani ye pefe chire abrofo eni wiase nyina se eba enkwasum a sebio abrofo ede ebibifo efemu a sebio eyade bia eyahomte ewo se abrofo no gitum se sebio ye ne ebibimem ebibifo ene ebibri memu ha no nyoma omaye tia na eyade a etia eye onyame abode sebio ye de ye sebio emua krampo a nipa bekasa etia o se imredu se sa idea na abrofo edetu nipa bitim a sebio ede ewiase se nipa kokko ana broni bia no sebio ewo se ochen bibini na bibini de sebio ne tuntum nti oya de bone no o se ewo se sutwa o sa abrofo ti ase se imredu ma abrofo no ntiase se ye ne bibifo ye sombo ma nyoma kura ye no sebio abrofo no dodo no aya na sebio ebro omunyansa ene mo ntiase so enti imredu se sa nipa mu nyiyimu nipa mu a sebio ye ka se wemu de se ne omote se ne omutuntum tie bebi omu free nti e wo se ye bu omu se omu nya nipa na omu ye nipa ase no o se sa de na o se abrofo no gitum se ye omu no de ba na wo se etwa so e wo se ye nyina ye tena se ne ye bu ye ho na sebio dwuma de ekọ so a efa eye enkuasom ene sebio nipa bi edi nipa bi ye nkwa no sebio eba slave trader sebio omu a ye form ekoye omu nkwa no na enye omu pe. The moment you take somebody and they are willing to go, that is not slave trade. But what John Mahama was talking about is picking people, taking people, basically forcing people, changing their environment when they themselves do not allow or agree to that action. The moment you do that, that means you are committing a crime against humanity. And so ofanipa against the will, every baby or war. Now we starting to another place, and I say, Okotono, and now Ukobuanisha baby, and now money dear, and it's oye, enya ne pa. Now we starting pano, Sebio, would this some the way trima, and also jitum say, dear why no, why yet here, unyamia body. Intende, one man say, where's Brunibes Sebio, in some one brother, so, of the Jemu, HH Muma, a real say, any abroad Funati, as you say. Ayo on John Dramani Mahama or Dr. Kwame Nkrumah wa fase oje Kwame Nkrumah sebio na brabo na nyansa ene de na opese ode chichire eye abibrima no atum no o se ono so de Kwame Nkrumah start ye no obeto aso onka ne kasa bo anhye ne yem obeka no kore obedwudwam ama wiase nyina hu se sebio eye abibrima mu ene Africa ene Ghana titiru no eba enkoasom a enya de a ye behome so ye beka ne se de tie ye betuntosu kokko but embradu se o se tuntosu fita ye betie no so intende John Dramani Mahama ejujemu ama ewiase nyina atena ate yeso Africa bibi free eba bibi yegina eba enkwasom ene sebio nipa etete eye ebibrimfo ana Africa for into John Mahama ende na no asema ode to so ana ode to dwa ewo United Nations no eno no. Now and I'd like to say thank you very much to the president. In fact, he's made Ghana very proud. He's made Africans proud. And Baby Kwame Nkrumah Ewubiano, he's going to be a very proud man. This was not about slanging. This is not about going to wear suits to prove you to Bruni say you were a slave. It was about letting it clear. And you could hear him clearly. He was not trying to impress anybody. He was telling the white man, he was telling the slave master that action was wrong and you need to admit to it. And after admitting to it, you need to do more than just admitting. You need to basically pay for the consequences and the atrocities you committed against humanity. And that was from the president of the Republic of Ghana. We should not underestimate this statement. You might think that it's a light statement, but those who are up there and now beginning to see that Africa is changing, the revolution in Africa, the young man, the young woman, the African is now beginning to understand that they have more basically that people need from them. And the moment we get to this point where we see our leaders being bold to speak on atrocities that was committed against our forefathers, we get to that point where the young African starts to believe in themselves. They start to understand that they can make it in Africa. Because when your leaders don't have the confidence, don't have the belief, are not able to speak up for you, then it makes it difficult for you to speak up for yourself. So when we have President Mahama and the likes who are ready and willing to go or take that path to speak against people who committed crimes against humanity and most importantly against Africans, it means young people like us, you watching me, you also start to have to build that confidence, that belief that we can build it from here. And this point, nobody can come in and physically pick people and go treat them like animals. You might have your own forms of slavery, which I understand. Every part of the world, there are some kinds of trade slavery. But we are talking about slavery whereby people enter people's territory, force them, take them away, go sell them or use them like animals. And that is the kind of slavery we are speaking against. And we're also speaking against other forms of trade slavery. It could be in a form of trade. It could be in a form of jobs. It could be in a form of different ways. And the people we are dealing with, our slave masters are very tricky people. They have so many ways. They have so many ways they do their things. And at this point, our leaders are also telling us we need to also be very dynamic and trying to find different solutions to the different strategies our slave masters are now adopting. And these are very important things that we cannot forget. So I'd like to applaud the president for this very precise, straightforward Kwame Nkrumahism statement. Nkrumahist, no, John Dramani Mahama. The Mahama, the Nkrumah of our time. Inti injujemuno, me sure say PZ4, ene Swami4, ene a year, a contombra Ellie, omunyina eshemi. Good evening to Mrs. Director, a year, the mother of a very good friend, Mr. Scott, are watching me tonight. Mrs. Director, thank you very much, ma'am. I know it's been a very difficult weekend last weekend. Daddy was buried, but I know you're a very strong woman, and then we believe in you. I'll come and see you when I come to Ghana, Mrs. Director. Good evening to Mrs. Director for being here tonight.